Hi everyone, today I'm filming the video that I wish I had 2 years ago, right as I was entering the IB program, and that is how to get a 7 in IB Visual Arts. Now I finished the IB program last May and I did indeed get a 7 for my visual arts course, and I think that now, having completed it, I am able to look back on the course itself and kind of think of a few steps that in my opinion greatly helped me achieve the grade that I did. Now this is kind of the ideal time to film this video, regardless of which year of the IB we're doing. If you're a second year, then you still have a good 4 months to complete most of your coursework. If you're an IB first year, then you have even more time. You have, I'd say, about a year to actually experiment and develop and actually choose what you're going to be pursuing for the next year and a half, and then actually do your coursework. And this is even for those of you who are wondering whether or not you should do the IB program, whether or not you should choose visual arts. Just sort of a step-by-step tutorial how to actually achieve a really good grade, even if you're not aiming for a 7. IB Visual Arts is a really hard course, and I think given the opportunity and the chance, you should take any help you can get. And now I will say at the beginning, because I know there are a few people who are considering doing visual arts, only because if you do it, it's only coursework based. So your final grade is dependent on 3 elements, that is the comparative study, the exhibition, and the process portfolio. So you're not writing any examinations, obviously. If that is your only motivation to take visual arts, is 1 exam less, then don't do it. Because despite the fact that you don't actually have to study for an exam, it is actually, in my opinion, a lot more hard to complete IB Visual Arts with a good grade than it is a different course, because you need to work consistently. You need to dedicate a lot of time, a lot of effort, and honestly a lot of research to do well in this course. So if that is your only motivation, is having 1 exam less, definitely do not do visual arts. That being said, IB Visual Arts was a very demanding course, but overall I am glad that I did it. I think I learned a lot about, first of all, art, but also about myself. I learned a lot about the medium, which I did, and I did a photography, but I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. I think it's definitely worth doing this course. It was very difficult at times. I know a lot of people in my group, if not all, struggled at least at one point. But in general, if you do enjoy art, if you do want to challenge yourself, I'd say it's worth doing this course. I'll also add that since I completed the course May 2020, things might change in future years. The IB does like to change its curriculum every few years. I don't think the changes would be significant. However, take with that what you will. Do check your syllabus, do check any grade requirements, etc., because those do change every so often. Also, May 2020 was one of the sessions which was modified due to COVID-19. However, visual arts was not greatly changed. I did not end up writing exams. However, visual arts stayed essentially the same for me, despite some other modifications to some of my other courses. Okay, so with all of that being said, I will get into some of the points that I have towards gaining a 7 in IB Visual Arts. Number 1 is especially directed towards first years, as you do have a lot more time than those people in second year, but that is experiment in different forms and media before you choose the one that you will actually pursue. Now, the IB is really good in allowing you to choose from a variety of different art forms, and you can essentially do whatever you want as long as you develop your work in that particular medium. So in my case, my school, for the first year essentially, or most of our first year, we tried a multitude of different forms. We experimented in different media. We learned about basic theoretical art concepts, so that we would essentially get fundamental skills that would be very necessary for developing our own art in the future, but also analyzing other artists and taking from their art whatever would be helpful for us. So if possible, I mean, your school should actually be providing you with help in regards to this. However, if you do have a lot more time in the first year, I highly recommend trying a multitude of different forms, experimenting in different types of specific things, so that you can actually decide what you want to do and not make a haphazard decision choosing something very easy and basic just because you didn't actually know that something else existed. So many different things that you can do, from photography to painting to stamping to clay and everything far and wide and in between. But it would really be a shame for you not to be able to do something just because you never practiced that particular thing. Again, your school should be allowing you different opportunities to experiment in these types of things, but if they're not, you can always like look up visual arts teachers, or not even visual arts, like A-level arts, other curriculums have art courses. Look up some teachers and blogs and what sort of things that they're doing with their students. Find something creative for yourself, something that you actually enjoy, because you will be spending a lot of time in that particular art form. 2, document absolutely everything. Every small experimentation you make, every paint swatch you make in class, every little sketch and drawing and photo, document everything you do, because that will come very, very, very useful when you're making your portfolio. And don't only like snap a bunch of photos and have them deep in your phone gallery where you cannot find them. Actually, I'd recommend getting all of the visual arts specific photography on your laptop into folders, organize them clearly, so that when it actually comes to making your portfolio, it's all very, very easy to find. Even the things that you think are silly and unnecessary can actually become very useful in filling space in your portfolio, because your portfolio should be half text, half images. It should be pretty evenly balanced. So especially when you're showing your development in one particular art form, you want to have your beginning swatches, and then some of your work, even if you don't think it's great, it's the development process that the IB loves, and you want to show how much you've grown as an artist. So document absolutely everything and organize it very, very well. This will help you so much when you're actually creating your portfolio. 3, once you find the specific medium you want to work in, research about it. Find other artists and specific niche things that they do that you could potentially do, or think of specific things that you yourself can do. At my example, I did photography, which in general is not very recommended just because it gets pretty poorly graded. However, I did kind of work around that because I didn't get all perfect grades, but I'll get into that in another point. So for my medium, I chose photography. However, there's so many different types of photography. First of all, just digital versus analog, but then also within that realm, you have different types of photography. Is it nature photography? Is it city photography? There's so many different things you can do. So I narrowed down my thing even more. I focus on city photography, but even city photography, that's pretty broad too. So I focused even more deeply on reflections. I did reflections within a city. So that is a lot more narrow than just photography. I did digital photography, I did digital cityscape photography, and I did digital cityscape photography of reflections. So again, that is a lot more narrow. And I had a few other specific features that was included in all of my work. And you just want to make sure that everything is different, that everything is unified, so that, for example, when you're doing your exhibition, it all forms a cohesive narrative. 4, you don't need to have a 7 in everything to have a final 7. For example, I had a 7 in the comparative study, I had a 7 in the process portfolio, and I had a 5 in the exhibition. I originally had a 6, but it was moderated down into a 5, and I still managed to have a final 7. So I'd say, especially since you get your exhibition marks a bit earlier than the process portfolio and the comparative study, if you get graded low in the exhibition, don't let that demotivate you. Focus really, really hard on the other aspects of your work, especially since the exhibition is the element that, in my opinion, is the most easily graded, very much based on bias. As I said before, photography is generally graded quite low, especially in the exhibition, because it's considered an easy medium. But I don't think that that should make you not want to pursue a medium that you want to do. So just focus on whatever you can focus on, which is making sure you check off all the boxes for the comparative study, the process portfolio. So don't worry about individual grades as much as the final big picture. Next, once you find your medium that you want to work in, find artists that are doing what you want to be doing. For example, I found specific artists that were doing cityscape reflection photography, and I looked into what they were doing, and I think that kind of trying to get inspired by some of their specific pieces really helped me develop my work. So when I would look at some of the pieces I did a few months before actually looking for specific inspirations versus the ones after, I definitely saw improvement, and I definitely saw how those specific influences changed and made my work better. And if you find specific artists that you're inspired by to do your exhibition work, you can then kind of similarly use some of the work that you didn't use for that for your comparative study, because you also need to have specific artists that you analyze and that you research about, and then you have to create some of your own work inspired by what you have learned from that research. So again, work smarter, not harder. All of that research will come in handy for both your exhibition, your process portfolio, and your comparative study. And the more research you do, the more varied your options are for all three of the work. And in my opinion, that will help you develop even more in all three of the elements of the final grade. And similarly to what I said before, try to focus most of your energy, if you can only dedicate a specific amount of time to some of the work, because obviously as IB students, you have a lot of work. Try to focus mostly on the less biased elements. So in my opinion, the less biased elements of the final grade are the comparative study and the process portfolio, because they don't include the criteria that essentially grades your quality of work, which again can be very biased. Even looking at my own grades, you can tell that even though I worked equally as hard, if not more hard, on my exhibition than the other bits of work, I got the lowest grade in the exhibition. And not only that, it was significantly downgraded from what my teacher had initially graded me. And that was very similar for my other course mates. I don't think anybody's grade was left as it was. I think we all got downgraded. So if you only have enough time for specific work, I'd say focus on the process portfolio, because that is 40% and is, in my opinion, less biased than the exhibition, which is also 40%. And then on the comparative study, because that is 20%, but it's also, in my opinion, a lot less biased and a lot easier to grade highly on if you put in a lot of work. And again, don't get discouraged if something gets graded badly. Before I submitted my process portfolio and my comparative study, my exhibition was graded as a 6. So that's not a bad grade in any sense. However, it could have been graded even lower if the IB graded it as a 5, which personally I was aiming for something a little bit higher than that. Even if you get a 5 or whatever grade you get from the exhibition, even if it's one you're not hoping for, work really hard on the other things. I mean, my exhibition was a 5 and I got a final 7. That's a 2-grade jump. You can definitely fix any grade, because it's only 30% for the exhibition, right? So I'd say work hard until the very end, especially since the final things you do is comparative study and process portfolio. Now I know that some schools actually do the comparative study in the first year, which does make sense, because that means you have less work in the second year and you can focus more on the other options. However, for me personally, it was really helpful to do the comparative study on artists that I had been experimenting with for my exhibition work, so that all kind of tied in together nicely. So whichever way your school does it, don't fight it. I think both ways are quite logical. However, regardless what grade you get for the other work, just don't give up. The IB is hard as it is. Just like push yourself, do as much as you possibly can, and then it'll all be done and the IB will be finished and you'll get a great grade. Next, continually develop your work and show progress. The IB loves progress. So what I said before with documenting every single little bit along the way, really keep that in mind, because the IB doesn't want to see incredible final pieces without any development. They'd rather see slightly less work, but that started really badly and got developed into something a little bit better. And they want to see your reflections along the way, and how you changed as an artist, and how different specific influences and how things that the IB encourages, such as researching artists, researching different art styles, researching different media, how all that experimentation has impacted you as an artist. So bear that in mind, document everything. As I said before, you will be grateful when you're pulling an all-nighter before the process portfolio deadline. You will be grateful for all the little random snippets that you took, because you do not want to be making paint swatches when you could be finishing your portfolio. Next, this is a tip for the process portfolio mostly, but the IB loves reflections and mind maps, and those are really easy things you can do to fill up your portfolio, because it's quite a long thing. It's, I think, 25 pages, maybe. Don't remember exactly, but it's a lot of pages. You obviously will have a lot of work over the last few years, but definitely include mind maps, reflections. The IB loves it, and those are relatively easy to do. And they look quite impressive because you have some like images, and usually you can do it hand drawn, so that's another little personalized aspect. And finally, get inspired. Keyword inspired by other people's coursework. Obviously I don't mean like steal other people's work, 100% not what I mean. However, something that I found very, very, very useful is other people who are sharing their process portfolio and their comparative study and how they structured it, different elements that they included. Now you have to be careful with this one, just because especially at the beginning of year 2, when I wasn't 100% sure what I would be doing for the next semester, I would look at other people's work and I would see someone draw a flower and I was like, oh, I should draw a flower for my portfolio. Or someone would draw something else and I'd be like, oh, I should do that. Don't do that. What you should be focusing on is specific structural elements to include in your portfolio. For example, what I said before, make sure to include some reflections at the end, like a mind map at the end. So if you see someone do something like that, try to maybe get inspired by the structure of that, or at the beginning try to do like a mind map of what you'd like to achieve as an artist. That's a project that we did in my school. We did like quite a long text of what we'd like to do as an artist, and that was a perfect thing to include on the first page. Then have specific pages for artist inspirations, then have specific pages for your own experimentation, have specific pages for developing your work in the particular medium you're using, but then have specific pages for experimenting in different media. There's a lot of specific structural elements that you can definitely include, and this doesn't necessarily depend on you creating any new work. It's more based on finding specific slides that you can include in your portfolio and thinking back, what did I do in my course that could fit into this category? I personally found it very, very useful to look at other people's work that they've shared online. So if you would like me to share my process portfolio and my comparative study, which both were graded quite highly, I would be very, very glad to do that, as I work very hard on them. So just let me know if you'd like to see that. So those were my tips for how to get a 7 in visual arts. These are all the elements that I wish I had known. I wish someone had told me before entering this course. Also remember, your teacher is an incredible resource. Most of the artist inspirations, most of the theme inspirations that I got from my teacher. Listen to your teacher's guidance. They are there to help you. They have been there for a very long time. And they've seen so many students achieve good grades and bad grades and everything in between, so they know what to do. So listen to them. They're a great resource, and good luck with your grades. I know that IB Visual Arts is very daunting. It's a lot of hard work that you have to put into the course, and I know that everybody deserves to get a 7 for all the hard work they put into this course. It is a horribly demanding, time-consuming course, and I wish you all the best. Because I know that the moment you've submitted all of your coursework for visual arts is the best feeling in the world, and I hope that you can all feel like that soon, because it's great. I highly recommend it. So if you have any other questions, leave them down below or DM me on Instagram, because now that it's been over half a year since I finished the IB, not that I would want to return to it, but I'm feeling slightly nostalgic, and I do want to help those currently in the process of finishing that daunting program. So any questions, leave them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.